Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Dr. Warren Doctor. I'm the President and CEO of the East Tennessee Historical Society, and it's a pleasure to be with you all today. As a quick show of hands, who here is a member of the East Tennessee Historical Society? If you're not, we always encourage our people who attend these to join us so that we can continue to put on these kinds of programs. And I should tell you, we have some things coming up for members and for everyone. If you're interested, we have Biscuits and Bubbly, which will be a sort of a Sunday brunch program that we're putting on May 3rd, which will be honoring Jack Neely. So we're very excited about that. Our sort of historian of Knoxville. And then on May 5th, for members, we're having our annual meeting of the membership and awards of excellence here at the East Tennessee History Center. It'll be at 5:30 on May 5th. It'll also be the awards program. We'll be able to acknowledge and hand out the awards to all the people across East Tennessee who've been working on historical projects for the last year. So we're very excited about that. We'll have guests from the Knoxville Round Table here also presenting an award. And then finally on May 13th, we'll be doing another talk here about the Washington County Archives, which is a how to do, and it'll also be a brown bag at 12 o'clock. So those are some of our upcoming programs. And now on to our speaker today. When I saw this topic come across my desk, I leapt at it. I'm very, very excited to hear from Dr. Johnson. Dr. Johnson got his PhD at the University of Alabama, although he was originally from Milwaukee. He got his MA from the University of Maryland and his BA from Purdue University, and has already written a very acclaimed book about the history of Alabama barbecue, which was amazing. I mean, that was amazing to just research. I'm deeply envious. I hope you got to sample lots of different types across the state. I need to get a copy of your book. And then he's going to talk to us about his most recent book today, about the history of bacon. And so, and I should also mention he currently is a professor at the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga. So without further ado, I'm going to turn over to our speaker. Thank you all very much.
All right, thanks for having me in person, and I am led to believe maybe there's a few people online, so welcome to you too. Over the course of this lecture, I will describe bacon first as mundane, then as a food of the laboring people, or people who do not work with their brains, and then as the food of enslaved African American people, and then as a threat to our individual health and the health of our society. All of that for millennia, long before it became popular and interesting, showing up at fancy restaurants and on old fashions and donuts and other treats, right? So for millennia, bacon was at best mundane, all right? In an age before refrigeration, it is a useful product. It tends to stay shelf stable. It avoids botulism, even though they didn't know that's what it was back in ancient Rome and ancient China. Yeah, the history of bacon goes back to ancient Rome and ancient China as a mundane staple, way to flavor otherwise humble, meager meals, greens, stews, porridges, grains, and whatnot. For most of its history, bacon has been a term that is broadly used. Before the industrial food system and shopping at the grocery store and picking out your own products, bacon did not have really a level of specificity that it does today. Right, when we go to the grocery store, we expect more or less the same thing across brands, across week to week, month to month. In general, we expect to get the same thing time after time. For most of its history, though, bacon did not work that way. Okay, it was most of the pork eaten by most of the people. So they used the term bacon to differentiate that pork, cured, salted, smoked, or some combination thereof, from fresh pork and hams, which have always been prized in a variety of societies. So basically, bacon meant everything else. The cured pork, the shelf-stable pork, sat in your chimney or hanging from the rafters, that you would cut off a hunk every couple days and throw it into the pot of stew that you've had going. At this point, right, bacon cannot be a pop culture and gastronomic phenomenon, right? Like I said, at best, it's a mundane staple, part of an everyday existence, and prized for its ability to be a part of your everyday existence. Back in early medieval England, they started to view the pig and its bacon as essential to starting a life together. In fact, to this day, they have a yearly ritual called the Dunmow Flitch Trials. Do we have any married couples in here? All right. Have we heard of the Dunmow Flitch Trials? Okay, so it's one of the explanations for our phrase, bring home the bacon. Okay, and so here's how it works. Every year, you go to Dunmow and appeal to the Lord. To your Lord, not the Lord. I guess both. You're gonna, anyway. When you arrive, you show up on a year and a day since the day you got married. And you have to convince the Lord and a jury that during that past year, you have not once regretted that marriage. And if you can convince these aforementioned people that you're truly, truly deeply in love and have not once regretted it, then you get to take home the bacon. A side of bacon, a flitch of bacon, as they called it. And yeah, I think this story goes a long way to showing how essential a pig and bacon was to a family settling down and starting a life together. They even go so far as to call the pig a mortgage lifter, all right? And by that term, they meant, yeah, just an essential piece of owning land and owning a home. By Elizabethan England, though, bacon becomes food for laboring people, unsuitable for those people who work with their minds. So by this time, right, bacon has had a long existence as mundane. And that means that people look to any opportunity to eat anything else. So as soon as people get some coin in their pocket, they're going to distinguish their consumption by choosing more variety, fresher food, fish, mutton, beef. Yeah, by Elizabethan England, it's established in England that beef and mutton are the so-called respectable meats, and pigs are a remnant of the country's own uncivilized, as they would say it, uncivilized past. So by this time, the English have come to truly value their very orderly, fenced-in farms. This is called the enclosure movement. This is part of a demographic crisis, really, in England. These farmers transition to the raising of sheep for the burgeoning textile industry. And sheep need a lot of care, a lot of attention, per right, all of the famous anecdotes about them and all the metaphors we have about sheeps and following our leaders. Yeah, so the English truly prize both sheep and mutton and cows and beef as animals that require lots of stewardship. All right, and giving us the term husbandry, right? They require time and attention and benefit from fenced-in, orderly farms. But pigs don't fit into that worldview, all right? They can roam in the woods. They can feed themselves. They're omnivorous. They eat almost anything, which is something that makes them useful for sure, but then also something that makes them uncivilized. They can defend themselves, right? When they roam free, they develop tusks and they can fight off bigger enemies. Yeah, and in all of these ways, people started to view the pig and its bacon as backward, as suitable for country people and as suitable for laboring people. In the cities, it's one of the paradoxes of that time as well as our own, that people who live in cities can enjoy actually more variety than farming people, right? One of our paradoxes that the people who produce our food are sometimes our most food insecure in today's language, but also have the least amount of variety in their diets. Yes, so with urbanization and the prevalence of medieval and then Elizabethan England's famous markets, urban people could get beef and mutton and pork, of course, fresh fish, fresh meat of all sorts. And that emphasis on variety was essential to distinguishing themselves from poorer people and country people. They take this idea so far that they come to use the word chaw bacon or bacon chewer as an insult, similar to the way we might use yokel or country bumpkin or village idiot or something like that. In the literature of the time, chaw bacon appears in ways where we might substitute those terms today. Maybe even things like hillbilly, right? That would work as well. So by 1589, this is Thomas Cogan, a schoolmaster, and he writes this health guide for his students. I think it's the Manchester Grammarian School. Gross meat is meat for gross men. Bacon is in no ways commended as wholesome, especially for students or such as have feeble stomachs. But for laboring men it is convenient. In such kind of men it forceth not how wholesome meat be, so it fill the belly and keep strength. Right, so from his perspective, laboring people do not care and need not necessarily care about their diets. They just need to feel full. They become associated with a type of dish, a type of pancake, basically a piece of bacon with a pancake batter around it, fried in a pan. And this is sort of, the ideal meal for a working, laboring, farming sort of person, but does not work for the so-called respectable sorts in society. I think this is really important to point out because these are the ideas that the early modern English will bring with them to the Americas. This is 1589. So by this time, the English have set their sights on the Americas. And by 1607, they'll have more or less established a settlement in North America, the present-day United States. Right? They carry ideas with them. They carry cultural baggage with them. And in the Americas, then, the dependence on bacon causes a lot of anxiety. So they come with ideas of bacon as a backward food, an uncivilized food, is a remnant of their own uncivilized past. But it's so darn useful, especially here in this place that at the time was the fringe, the backwater of the empire. All right, so pigs, I've just listed a number of ways that make them useful, right? They feed themselves, defend themselves. And so for these English colonists in North America, they make a lot of sense because they can turn them loose in America's woods and hunt them down or otherwise corral them when it comes time for the yearly hog slaughter. So in this context, pigs and bacon are absolutely essential. They also convert food to flesh at a faster rate than cattle do. And then in the southern colonies especially, they're even more useful. So in New England, people are more or less actually out of all the colonists, they're the best able to replicate the tastes and ideas of the metropole of fashionable London. The cows produce a really rich milk for cheese and butter, and that justifies the raising of cows. And so, yeah, in New England, they're eating plenty of pork for sure, and plenty of bacon, absolutely. But as part of a more varied diet of, fish, beef, and mutton. In the South, however, the cows don't produce the same quality milk, at least at the time, that makes raising them and getting all those extra products out of them, right? Cheese and butter and fresh milk. That justifies, right, the cost and expense and the time of raising a cow. But again, cows and sheep too are the respectable animals and produce the respectable meat. So what does it mean then for this society on the fringe of the empire? So for most English colonists, the dependence on pigs and the dependence on bacon only goes to serve as another example of their own backwardness and their vast literal and metaphorical distance from fashionable London and the center of the empire. By 1728, this is Virginia planter William Byrd, who's one of Virginia's wealthiest people, an enslaver and plantation owner. And he's also a surveyor and like map maker of sorts. And he's commenting on the people of North Carolina. 1728, the Virginia planter William Byrd notes that North Carolina's poorer colonists ate so much bacon that they had become extremely hoggish in their temper, and that many of them seemed to grunt rather than speak in their ordinary conversation. He goes on to say that these are people that lack so much taste, they're so far behind in taste and respectability that they fry their bacon in a pint of rum and would... and they drink plenty of hard spirits too. And so that's another reason. He actually links the two, but this type of diet is going to lead people to want to like punish their stomachs with hard liquor. Yeah, so in effect, what William Byrd is doing is he's continuing that idea of bacon as backward, as suitable for poorer people, maybe laboring people. And, I mean, effectively with his language, he's characterizing these people as the first generation of so-called white trash, right? These are indentured servants. These are the poorest people. They are moving into the upcountry part of Appalachia. And these are the people that are soon going to be coming into East Tennessee. All right, so by the mid-19th century, this is how it goes, all right? When Europeans look at all Americans, they think all Americans are bacon eaters, all right? Uncouth, backward, rustic, provincial, choose your word, okay? They eat fast, they eat too much meat, and they eat the wrong kinds of meat. They eat bacon. Within the United States, though, bacon gets caught up in conversations between Americans about its role in the diet and its suitability. And so in northern places, especially urban places, people are increasingly getting linked to the industrialized food system and the emerging technologies of the cold chain, like rail cars. And they're not too far off from refrigerated rail cars. And that means getting fresh meat, but it also means getting a wider variety of meat through the meat packing centers of first Cincinnati, and then by the 1850s and 60s, Chicago and Milwaukee, and those other Midwestern meat packing giants. Okay, so if Europeans view all Americans as bacon eaters, in the United States, Northerners, especially urban Northerners and middle-class Northerners, start to look at all Southerners as bacon eaters. All right, so they're going to keep doing this to the one level below them. Within the South, like Byrd, right, on the previous slide, right? He's one of the wealthiest people, and he absolutely ate tons of bacon, right? It's just, in an age before refrigeration, it's just still too useful, all right, and too important. But someone like Byrd can distinguish his diet through variety with chicken and beef and mutton and fresh fish and more vegetables. Whereas the poorer people within the South, there's a difference between people who eat a lot of bacon and people who depend on bacon. And that's the poorest groups of people. And yes, this is Frederick Law Olmsted, who you probably know is the designer of Central Park. Before he was this famous landscape and kind of urban architect, he was a journalist and reformer, interested in the slave economy and the southern states. And so between 1852 and 1857, he made a series of journeys to the southern states as kind of an investigative reporter. Upon arrival, he says, I made the first practical acquaintance with what shortly was to be the bane of my life, vis-a-vis cornbread and bacon. I partook innocent and unsuspicious of these dishes, without a thought that for the next 6 months I should actually see nothing else. All right, so he's portraying two societies that are moving apart. I wonder what's going to happen in 1860, right? But he's describing an industrializing, urbanizing, free wage labor society based in the North that can benefit from capitalism and industrialization and eat a variety of foods and eat more refined foods and start to mimic better than ever those fashionable tastes of London and Paris and so on. Meanwhile, there's a region within the country that seems backward, seems uncouth, unmannered, right? People who, in the words of Byrd, grunt rather than speak. In one other story, there's a northern traveler on a steamboat, and he's complaining about his very loud neighbors in the room next door, and they are debating Bacon, but he's assuming they're debating Francis Bacon, the philosopher and scholar. But no, it's a Kentuckian and a Virginian and a Mississippian, yes, if I recall, and they're arguing about who has the best bacon. And they're doing it, in a very loud, obnoxious, braggadocious way. And so by this time, these are Northern ideas of what Southerners are like, especially the lowest class of Southerners. So if bacon is for first laboring people, and then it's for Southern people, then who is it, per the logic, ideal for? Okay. Bacon, from long experience, is known to be the most healthy meat diet in the world, particularly for Negroes who do most of the labor on the cotton plantation. So if bacon is suitable for laboring people, then it's especially suitable for enslaved African and African American people, per the logic. And so by the mid-19th century, bacon gets caught up in pseudo-scientific and pseudo-racial ideas about the differences in black and white bodies. All right, it goes like this. They're still lingering, they're still clinging to really ancient ideas about health and medicine. The humors and the biles, right? Dry, wet, hot, cold, right? Black, yellow, red, and anyway. So they're still clinging to these Galenic, really ancient Greek ideas about medicine, and that the different races, per these theories, must have different balances in their humors. So from their perspective, from this generation of so-called scientists and doctors, they think African American or African black people and white women have the same humoral balances, okay? But for a white woman, that is acceptable, Okay, by this time, the ideals of beauty are starting to emphasize like the waifish, sickly white woman with a really pale face, and she's got tuberculosis, and that actually makes her beautiful. But that's not, as you can imagine, very useful for the people who labor from before sunrise to after sunset on cotton plantations. So they both have the same deficiencies in their bodies, but that's suitable for white women, but that's not suitable for black men especially. And so they need, per the logic, a heat-generating agent, lots of fat and lots of protein. And bacon comes with both. It's a grease-giving, heat-generating agent in the parlance of the time. And that makes it particularly suitable from their theories for laboring black bodies. And yeah, you can at once distinguish a bacon-fed Negro by their sleek appearance and lack of tuberculosis. Again, a disease that at the time was suitable for white women, but not suitable for the laboring black body. Yeah, so they both have wet and cold humors, hence the coughing. But black people need the heat-generating agent to help them sustain labor in the field. I should also point out, right, that this is part of an emerging pro-slavery ideology based in this pseudo-scientific racism. Django Unchained, right? In that famous scene, Leonardo DiCaprio's character is explaining, right, with pseudoscience, right, these differences between black and white bodies, okay? And so bacon gets caught up in those conversations. This is such a prevalent idea that by the end of the century, in the early 20th century, reformer, famous reformer, right, an educator, Booker T. Washington, insists on limiting or maybe even banning bacon at Tuskegee Institute. If you are what you eat and you eat slave food, then what are you? Right? And so he views diet as an essential part of his uplift mission. He hires dietary scientists and home economists to work at Tuskegee. In fact, it's the only white faculty member, a home economist and reformer named Alice Kane from Wisconsin comes to Tuskegee. And with him, they cooperate to create a diet for Tuskegee faculty, staff, and students. At Tuskegee, faculty and students eat a lot of beef, which compared to then even their white neighbors would have been radical. And it means that at Tuskegee, they probably had a more respectable, as they would say, diet, and with an emphasis on beef, fresh fish, things like salmon croquettes, lots of oysters. And around them, people would have continued to rely on bacon, to such an extent that bacon is a synonym for meat. And they refer to the diet of the Black Belt South, that string of especially fertile soil that runs through Georgia, Alabama, and Mississippi, as a region that subsists on the 3 M's, meat, meaning bacon, molasses, and meal, as in cornmeal. Yeah, so at Tuskegee, this is a pretty radical diet for his students. But he's also confronting another part of his mission, and that's that he emphasizes self-sufficiency. And that Tuskegee has to be self-sufficient because that's what will make it not immune, but sort of immune from right outside pressure, from segregation and disfranchisement and Jim Crow. And so that means pigs, right? Because they've been so central to the South for such a long time. So they do indeed raise pigs at Tuskegee. They do eat fresh pork at Tuskegee, and they do eat bacon, but never as a major protein, as in like strips of bacon or like a bacon steak or something, but usually cut up in small amounts for a dish like Boston baked beans. Okay, and the menus that have survived from Tuskegee, Boston baked beans, which I think is really interesting, right? Evoking Boston, a place where freedom, was supposedly born, and a place where, at least in Washington's mind, would have been, and in reality, a large hotbed of free black people, not similar to that of, or not looking like enslaved black Southerners. In general, most people, continue to look at the South as backward, especially after the U.S. Civil War and the triumph of one society, an industrial, urban, wage labor society, over a backward system, right? This slave system and slave economy. Plus, the destruction of the region made it more dependent than ever on an industrial food system and more dependent than ever on bacon, right? A transportable product used to flavor otherwise humble, meager meals, like the picture here, right? Going out every day to the smokehouse or the barn, cutting off a hunk to throw into the stew to flavor vegetables and greens and grains. When Northerners and middle-class people and wealthier people of all sorts look at the South, and especially look at the Mountain South, they don't look at it like a region worthy of protection, worthy of saving. They don't view it as, like we do today, as maybe charming or authentic or especially honest. No, they looked at it as backward and as in need of reform. So during the late 19th and early 20th century, reformers come to the region, and they immediately comment on the ubiquity of bacon in people's diets. They live on fat bacon, cornbread, and a few vegetables fried in as much grease as they could get, said Catherine Pettit and May Stone in their diary, who they founded Heinemann Settlement School in eastern Kentucky. All right. So if bacon was at best mundane, but then suitable for laboring people, and then suitable for laboring black people, as if bacon's reputation could not suffer anymore, bacon became dangerous. In the 20th century, emphasis on low-fat dieting really struck a blow at bacon's popularity. Plus, as it has been for millennia, it's cured with nitrites and nitrates, although the ancient Romans and ancient Chinese did not know that. But this is the chemical that delays the growth of the botulism causing bacteria. But these are precisely the qualities that had for a long time made it useful, but now make it dangerous. All right, so in the 20th century, US Americans confront something that they usually call civilization's dilemma. They're industrializing, they're suburbanizing, urbanizing, and that means we have more leisure time, right? We get to enjoy the fruits of our labor, right? Especially after World War II, right? The United States becomes immensely wealthy, and a lot of that flows into the pocketbooks of the skyrocketing middle class. But could this be the source of our own downfall? Right? The luxuries of our new life, of the luxuries of the benefits of capitalism might actually end up undoing it all. The meat-heavy diets, the rich diets that we've all been striving for millennia are now maybe too bad for us, now that we don't work with our hands and our bodies. So in the mid-20th century, bacon becomes a remnant of the past, is a way that a lot of food writers and dietitians and doctors describe it. Certainly, it was useful, but now in this age of refrigeration and in this age of brain work and sitting at your desk all day, it no longer seems useful. And worse yet, it might be killing us. By 1977, Senator George McGovern and his Senate subcommittee issue dietary guidelines for the United States. Eat less red meat, eat more vegetables, eat some fresh fish, avoid salt. And in a lot of these ways, bacon becomes public enemy number one, right, as fatty and as salty. In the same year, however, the USDA convenes a committee to look into the effects of nitrites, nitrates, and these chemicals, when heated, combine with amino acids to form carcinogenic nitrosamines. And so bacon does indeed have trace amounts of these cancer-causing chemicals in it. By 1977, this USDA committee is debating whether bacon should even be on the market. Dr. Michael F. Jacobson, who works for this organization called Center for the Science and the Public Interest, calls bacon at this time the most dangerous food in the supermarket. And by the 1990s, this reputation so solidified that one nutritionist called it not even a food anymore, that it didn't even belong in one of the food groups from the brand new food pyramid that was brand new in the 1990s. The bacon didn't even fit into any of those categorizations, that it was a, fat-laden, salty, nitrite-ridden, carcinogenic thing. And so, yeah, by the 1990s, bacon or pork bellies, from which bacon comes, are so cheap that the United States government purchases them to give them away as foreign food aid. According to one industry insider who worked for Hormel, fat was a drag on the carcass. So the fatty parts of the animal returned next to nothing on the futures markets and on the commodities markets. So how do we get to the Luther burger or the ladies' brunch burger? So I want to make sure that you buy the book. So I'm going to hold a few things back here. And I do have, just another couple minutes. And I also want to hear your questions. So I do have a different reason for wrapping this up here in the next minute or two. But I argue that bacon as a staple had to die, right? It's been a staple for a millennia, and it's not exciting anymore in the age of refrigeration. It's not interesting, and it's not useful. In fact, it might even be dangerous. I would like to point out that the National Pork Board, as you famously know, the Other White Meat campaign, they're trying to compete with literally chicken, right? The superfood of the 20th century, the boneless, skinless chicken breast, virtually fat-free. Yeah, during this fear of fat craze, this low-fat dieting craze, where even something like Lucky Charms has the American Heart Association seal of approval on it, bacon does truly look like it doesn't have a place. In the National Pork Board's own literature, they're telling people ways to get bacon out of their diets for the sake of different types of pork, like substitute that bacon in your greens with a tenderloin, right? Or substitute out that bacon and have, a piece of fresh pork instead, substitute it here or there and whatnot. Yeah, in their own literature, they're trying to develop fat-free bacons, but they're also trying to push people to other parts of the animal. And that's actually changing the size and shape of the animal. Longer, leaner animals that can fetch higher prices on the commodity markets. Plus, we don't use bacon grease for as many things anymore, right? We have seed oils and commercial oils to fry our food in, to grease our wagon wheels. To grease the wheels of our machines. So if bacon's not useful anymore as a staple, it is useful as a treat, as an indulgence, as a decadent flavoring or topping. Maybe even popular because of the danger that it presents, right? In an age of standardization and routines, and other elements of kind of the urban/suburban life. A little bit of danger might seem a little thrilling. And in the food writing around Bacon's Renaissance, there is a lot of emphasis on excitement and on the dangers that it poses as part of the thrill. I guess life can become so safe that we have to invite pain and suffering into it. But that's what's happening here with the Luther Burger. This is, in 2006, it debuts. It's a bacon cheeseburger between two Krispy Kreme donuts. There are different origin stories, one of which the product owes its origins to the series The Boondocks, in which they start a cafe, but serve food like this that might cause, in the words of the characters on the show, death among its customers. You can't serve this to people. It will cause death, says one of the characters. But Paula Deen, right, famously uninterested in your dietary advice, develops her own version with a fried egg on it, and she tries to turn it into something respectable, the ladies' brunch burger. Even she admits that it goes too far. I actually made this with my class last week, or 2 weeks ago, on our last day of class. We were talking about celebrity chefs, stunt food, food Instagram, and the implications of that and what that means for society. But we made this to reinforce our lesson, and it was actually not bad at all. But yeah, I want to point to the element of danger, right, in the writing around it. It is sticky. This is a meal best eaten with gloves or a hazmat suit. All right, so in the early 20th century, the National Pork Board made two calculations and issued two campaigns. They started to roll down or wind up the Other White Meat campaign. And they had one campaign designed to work with food service, so Taco Bell and Wendy's, and that's the Better with Bacon campaign, right? Adding what at the time was an extremely cheap product. You can add fat and salt, so deliciousness, to your mass-produced meals, jack up the price, add some cachet, add some interest to it. As scholars, we've severely underlooked the role of the Bacon Club Chalupa at Taco Bell in shaping our diets. At the grocery store, they unleashed the Don't Be Blah campaign, right? Maybe don't get the boneless, skinless chicken breast for your 7th meal this week, right? Maybe add some excitement, maybe even a little bit of danger to your lives. I think you'll be okay. And pick up some bacon and be interesting for once. So in the food writing during the 21st century's bacon mania, however, there's quite a bit of romanticizing the very same people who, for most of this lecture here today and for most of the book when you pick up your copy, suffered so much scorn and contempt for their bacon-eating ways. So this is 1983. In 1983, George T. Hawley picks up Georgia-cured pepper bacon at the Atlanta airport. He's intrigued by the Bell and Gingham selling it behind the counter, but he admitted that he had moved on from bacon. He was sick of the stuff that comes in the plastic, vacuum-sealed, uniformly sliced, translucent slices that, in his words, turned from greasy rubber to sawdust in an instant. Right, so he's fed up with the grocery store stuff, but this is something different, right? The smell of the pepper absolutely dominates. And so he decides it's wrapped not in the the plastic, the vacuum seal. It comes in a coarse weave cotton cloth, right, in a piece of like gingham. And he finds it all very enchanting, and he takes it home. And he starts to cook it, and there's even danger in that process. He opens it up, and it says, warning, mold is to be expected, or something like that. Just like, rinse it off, it'll be fine. You got to cut it off the rind, right? This doesn't come ready for you, right? It takes a certain sort of person to dominate and cook it. So much so that he recalls his own military past. He says, I don't back down, I was in the Marines. Right? But he's in the uniform of the urban middle class, right? But he gets to romanticize, he gets to temporarily escape standardization, routine, soft urban life. As I sawed away, I could picture the raw-boned mountain man who had cured this thing, scowl on his face, coonhound skulking at his feet, right? And so he gets to, at least in his imagination, visit a time and place much different than his own through the consumption of bacon. And it's that type of discussion of mountain people, southern people, and poorer people that dominates the food writing and the rhetoric around 21st century's bacon mania. So I would love to get your questions and keep talking about it. But I want to know what you want. I want to tell you what you want to hear right now. So. Yeah, go ahead.
As a longtime UT football fan, I take personal umbrage at Mr. Hawley's insinuations about the coonhound skulking. I want to follow up on that is that, I noticed that foodways is a very strong current in Appalachian studies right now. Is bacon ubiquitous in these foodways? Because I want to stand firm with the value, the folk history of bacon against the whole idea of health. And I want to advocate for bacon as continuing my working class tradition. Am I on the right side of history or not?
Okay, so with regard to the dog, I would point out that in the column, I guess it is, not an article, it's a column. In the column, there's something about his own, lab or something, whatever it is. Right, this urban dog that also gets transformed by eating the bacon, right? It gets to relive its own wild past through the consumption of bacon. It starts to suddenly no longer just a napping lap dog, right? It's a very energetic dog, almost. So the dog also gets to revisit his own pre-industrial, pre-urban past. So, yes, I think we can defend bacon here for a second. So, I think one thing, though, that's going on, right, is as bacon gets more popular and more expensive, especially these craft sort of bacons that are done in ye olde time ways, but that's the expensive stuff at the farmer's market and at the grocery store. And that means that it's out of reach for most of the same people that it claims to romanticize, right? It's at price points, right? So now that this is a place that is tied more than ever to an industrialized food system, it's now a mark of privilege to circumvent that and get to cosplay, right, as someone who eats from the land, right, and eats locally. And eating from the land and eating locally was what, for a long time, had gotten these people in so much trouble, right? They would be better served to embrace the industrial food system and get variety into their diets. And now that they can't do that, we've rediscovered doing that. But yeah, one thing I would point out is, so at this, it's a few weeks, maybe a few months older than my own book, but there's a really good book out about how American kids of the 20th and now 21st century have become the pickiest eaters. And one of the arguments she makes is that, well, vegetables used to be delicious. And she's not saying that in like, oh, right, the farm fresh stuff is always better than the stuff in the grocery store. That may or may not be true, and that's up to you and your own tastes. No, she's pointing out that we used to prepare our vegetables in things like butter and bacon grease. And that fat should actually help us digest and actually take in most of those vitamins that are so important to us. So yes, I do think there's still a place for keeping that jar of bacon grease on your counter or in your refrigerator, and just putting a little bit in to make your green beans taste so much better. I absolutely think that sounds like again, I'm not a doctor of nutrition, but that sounds okay to me.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'll go here and then over here. Yeah.
Okay. I mentioned this prior to the talk. Any comments on Piggly Wiggly?
Yeah, so I would just point out that, yeah, so Piggly Wiggly, which there's a book on, also through University of Georgia Press, which has its origins right in Memphis. It kind of gains popularity and actually gets a patent as like a self-service grocery store, right? Customers work their way through it, pick stuff off the counters and from the refrigerators themselves. And that puts so much more emphasis on things like branding, because in the era of the general store or the commissary store or the mill market, there weren't brands. There was flour in a barrel, and you asked for how much, and they gave it to you, right? Yeah, so it has definitely changed the way we eat, and has given rise, to all those brands of bacon, right? And how they sort of try to differentiate themselves. Like, this brand uses this wood, or this brand is thicker, this brand is smoked more. But it's all recognizable nonetheless as bacon, brand, week after week, month after month. And that's kind of standardization at the time was, I know, kind of paradoxically, the thrilling part. Like, you didn't have to worry about it being different week after week or being out of stock, right? This was the benefit of the industrial food system. For the first time in human history, it comes prepared for you in a vacuum sealed, that packaging used to be exciting and interesting, and now it really ticks us off. So, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I'm gonna, thank you, that was excellent. I'm gonna abuse my authority and ask you two questions. The first one is a question about the before time. So the transition from during Elizabethan Tudor England in moving into, it was something that kind of represented marriage, it was just a part of life, into something that was sort of disdainful or sort of shameful. And I wonder if, Richard III's insignia was a boar's head.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder, because of the Tudor rejection of Lancastrian Britain and Richard III's reign and all that, I wonder how much that affected this. That's the first question. The second question is, can you talk about the invention of the McRib in the 90s coinciding with the price of pork bellies being absolutely very minuscule?
Yeah, so as for Richard III's, so I think what's going on is he's trying to link himself to Britain's own Roman past. So the Romans absolutely loved to put like boar's heads on their standards and on their shields. In fact, to such an extent so we have a few origin stories for the pork taboo in the Middle East, that part of Asia. And a lot of it center on the dry, arid climate, and pigs would compete with humans for food, whereas ruminants eat stuff that we can't eat, right? They can turn grass into fuel and grow. But pigs thrive everywhere. So that sort of idea for the pig taboo hasn't stood up. I promise I'm getting to what you asked. Anyway, so the Romans they found bacon as useful as anything, right? They were an army, they had to feed a lot of people, they traveled far distances, and bacon and pigs, either on the hoof or as bacon, was essential to their army. The pig, does become kind of an emblem of Roman power throughout Europe into the Middle East and then up into Great Britain. To such an extent, that most people start to view the pig as the Roman animal. And so if you are Jewish, for example, and Rome is your enemy, then what animal is your enemy? Okay, but I think, right, for something that England does versus maybe the other parts of the British Isles has really embraced their Romanness. After all, that's as far as the Romans got, right? And anything beyond that was uncivilized. I think they are. I don't know that much. My department chair would have to correct me on all this, but I don't know enough to say whether they're like rejecting Richard III or that past, but they are rejecting pigs as part of their own uncivilized past, and that England has moved beyond that. Into the more respectable. And by Elizabethan, like London's fashionable, right? With Shakespeare and the Elizabethan court. And so on the stage, on the global stage, England's becoming something different. And this extends to like Scotland. Scotland actually had a pork taboo too, where it was part of their own uncivilized past. But the Scottish, especially with the prevalence of the textile industry there, had moved on to portraying beef and then mutton especially as especially valuable. So in the 1990s, something like the McRib fits perfectly into this. That they're trying to excite people. They're trying to sell food based on cachet and interest and the questions it asks and the way it maybe makes you look, maybe you're an interesting eater or exciting, or maybe you're someone who's not so concerned about his health and maybe you're gonna like push that in an era when everyone's concerned. This is the era of like rice cakes and Slim Fast, right? Yeah. And in that context, the McRib or the Baconator, which isn't too far away, sounds pretty damn good. But that's part of the danger it invokes is part of the thrill, right? And so, again, and this is kind of the more academic side of the book, but the way we play with identity and cross boundaries. If middle-class people and urban people need to be respectable and have self-restraint, right, and follow the diet and follow the program and have the slim body, then these are people who seem liberated from that. And so at least temporarily, there's something about them that's enviable or desirable. And that's what he's doing here, and that's what I think is going on with these like cheat foods, right? I promise I'm good all week, but on Saturdays I eat bacon, right? Or I can indulge, I've earned, right, my Baconator or something. And it's gone within 2 minutes, right? And then you can go back to resuming your otherwise, dietary, your sanctioned health plan. Yeah.
But doesn't your perspective on all of that just depend on how you focus on the commercialization of food? Having done a lot of work in agribusiness, primarily for Cargill and different divisions of Cargill, I don't eat poultry because I spent too much time in the poultry industry and I understand residual growth hormones and all of those kinds of things that make their way into the human food stream. But with pigs, because they reproduce at a much higher level and because you don't have to do all the growth hormones and things like that, it seems to me that pork is a healthier food. But back to the point that you keep making, a lot of it is the marketing and the perception of the health quality, right?
Yeah, so I mean that's part of what we do in the humanities. So at UTC we have a huge health and human performance group of students, one of our biggest schools on campus, and nutrition and nursing are massive programs. But yeah, health is definitely the science and the chemistry and the biology, but health is also a cultural and historical construct. So what is healthy for us is certainly the result of, okay, we've made new discoveries and we've made, we can now identify this or identify that, and like you just mentioned. But also, what does the right body look like, right? And who's healthy and who's healthy and what is healthy changes over time. And that's where it comes into my realm of something worthy of study. And so I think what's interesting is how long some of these ideas have actually lingered into our health advice. By the 1960s, so I portrayed bacon as a heat generating agent. During the Civil War, this causes a lot of concern for the era's health professionals, which at that time, dietary science is really new, kind of getting its origins in the 1840s. So they're looking at all these soldiers who are absolutely going to eat so much bacon the whole time because it's too useful not to take with you right in your wagons as you are conducting the labor. So now all of these people who maybe didn't work with their bodies have to go work with their bodies more than ever. So yes, okay, so in this context, bacon's going to be useful and it might even be suitable. But it's a heat generating agent because of our biles or whatever. And that might not turn out so good because where's most of the war going to be fought? In the hot part of the country. And so that concerns people. It's like these soldiers should not be eating a heat generating agent in the middle of the summer. By the 1960s, the National Pork Board was interviewing Des Moines area housewives, grocery store shoppers, and they're still repeating that idea that you shouldn't eat bacon in the summer. Bacon is suitable for the winter months, but it's too fatty to eat during the summer, and our constitutions cannot handle it. And so, yeah, I will also say that bacon has become a symbol for people who are frustrated with industrial food and for people who are frustrated with the dietary advice. And that's on both sides of the aisle. There's a segment of the population, Alex Miller of Lickskillet Farm, if you ever see him at the farmer's market out there, will refer to his customers as the Prius and pickup crowd. They're both people suspicious of industrial food and of science and of medicine. I mean, we saw this play out right during the pandemic, how on two sides people embraced anti-vaccines or something like that. And so bacon, as sort of its links to pre-industrialism, is now part of the appeal, right? It was the reason all those people got made fun of, but now it's part of the appeal.
I'm sure that Alan Benton can testify to that too.
Yeah, so Alan Benton, right, so they don't have nitrites and nitrates according to, but yeah, he's a person, right, that made a type of bacon that his parents made and his great-grandparents made, right? But also a type of bacon that was meant to be put in greens and stews and porridges and grains. And that's where its crazy amount of saltiness makes sense, right? Salt, fat, green beans, right? Or collard greens or mustard greens or something. And so it was useful for his parents and their parents and so on in their time and place. And now, right, it's on fine dining menus, right? And it's, so he's, observed the whole spectrum.
Well, in that case, can't you consider bacon healthy because it's causing people to eat more vegetables.
That would be one of the arguments, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, like I said, the fat helps you digest some of those minerals.
Well, you're one of the
Fat's fat.
taste.
Yeah, and they,
So I look at it.
yeah, over here.
So speaking of the curing process, did any patterns emerge about how that sort of knowledge gets passed down? Is it through families? Is it communities? How did that sort of work?
Yeah, I mean, so like for the ancient Romans and ancient Chinese, it's just like the bacon from that we made from that salt from that cave seems to last longer than the stuff we make from, right? But they're using the products that we're using today, saltpeter, potassium, I can't remember, potassium nitrite and sodium nitrate, or vice versa. But yeah, these are ancient chemicals that we've used the whole time, but yeah, as a sort of like folk wisdom, right? And in East Tennessee, we have those sorts of caves. In fact, what's his name? John Sevier actually had salt caves that produced the kind of salt that could be used for curing. And so it was more like a folk wisdom sort of thing. But that's, again, back to this idea of like the industrialized food system and our suspicions of it. Part of it is how far away we are from our food now. When in the 1970s, the National Pork Board interviewed people like, why do you avoid bacon? And he's like, well, because you all just put chemicals in it. And they're talking about the chemicals that make it bacon and have made it bacon for millennia. And that was part of their argument, right, is now that we have a name for it, it sounds scary. But when it was just John Sevier salt, it was natural. And yeah, I mean, that's the extent to which I can really like speak about whether it's healthy or not or how much its risk actually is. But there is an element of, now that it's unfamiliar and now that we're not doing it, it does seem scarier than it would have been for people living in, I guess, ignorance. But yeah, also, it was never meant, for the first, millennia of its consumption, it was never meant to just like be eaten as strips, and never meant to be eaten that much, right? Like when I was at the University of Alabama, we have a BLT where they put the number of pieces of bacon on it for national titles that the football team has won. And I think we're up to 21, 27?
Oh,
Yeah, that's right. But that was never, our biology was not prepared for that. But yeah, like the way the Bentons ate it back in the day. I'm not an expert, but I can't imagine that's really causing anyone all that much harm. Yeah, go ahead.
I remember growing up, in the Northeast in the 1970s, and my mother believing there are winter foods that are heavy and will keep you warm, and there are summer foods.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
that
so
are lighter,
yeah, I mean, medicine and dietary science are so new to us as academic and medical disciplines. Yeah, I mean, the fear of fat century, right? In the 20th century, the wisdom was that fat made people fat, and it was that simple, right? And that if you avoid it, but of course that didn't happen, right? Rates of diabetes and heart disease and other chronic illnesses. So yeah, we're past time. I'm happy to linger. I only have like final exam stuff to do, so I'd much rather talk to you. So yeah, let's call this the official end, but I'll be around. I can sign your book. I can answer your questions. I'm not on a schedule, so I'll just chill out here and would love to meet you and talk to you. Thank you.